Good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday morning to you, and welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. We are bringing to a close our examination of Jesus' statement in Matthew 24, verse 34. Verily I say unto you, this generation will by no means pass away until all of these things are fulfilled. Now, all of those things included the preaching of the gospel into all of the world, the abomination of desolation, the great tribulation. And yet we are told, well, it could not refer to Jesus' temporal, this generation. Now, let me remind you, folks, you really have to catch the power of this. The only reason, are you listening? The only reason that people give alternate definitions of the term this generation, and they try to make it mean family, tribe, this kind of people, baby making, the generation to see these events. The only reason they impose that kind of a definition on that term is because, point number one, they believe the apostles were asking about the end of the current Christian age in Matthew 24 and verse 3. Well, as I've pointed out to you many, many times, the current age, the Messianic age, has no end. Now, I'm sorry, if the age of Christ and the New Covenant has no end, then when the apostles asked what should be the sign of the end of the age, guess what? They weren't asking about the end of the Christian age. How do you ask about the end of that which is endless, which has no end? I've shared with you before, a couple of years ago I had a formal public debate with Dr. David Hester of Faulkner University. And in one of my very first affirmatives, I got up and I made this point. The Christian age has no end. The apostles were asking about the end of the age, but the end of the age that they were asking about was the age represented by the temple. Now ask yourself, what age did that old covenant temple represent? Did it represent the Christian age? If you answer yes, I'm sorry, you're wrong. I say that as kindly as possible. The Mosaic covenant was epitomized, symbolized by that temple. That Herodian temple, in no way, no shape, no form, nor fashion, represented the Christian Messianic New Covenant age. Oh, well, we're told the apostles were confused. No, they were well informed about the end of the age. They actually understood it far better than most people today. Anyway, the only reason that anyone seeks to change the meaning of this generation to mean anything different from his then living contemporary temporal generation, the only reason they do that is because of their preconceived ideas about the nature of Christ's coming and the identity of the age that was to end. Just the other day on Facebook, Sam Frost said, can any of you hyper-prets, Sam Frost is all into name-calling these days, can any of you hyper-prets tell me what Matthew chapter 24 and verse 8 was talking about? Well, you see, Mr. Frost now takes the position that Matthew 24, 8, and 9 referred to AD 70, and therefore when Jesus said, these are all the beginning of birth pains, but the end is not yet, What he means by that is, well, the fall of Jerusalem would happen, but that's not the end. The end of the age that he wants to talk about, imposing his artificial, presuppositional doctrine of the end of the Christian age onto the text. So he has the destruction of Jerusalem having no eschatological significance, having no temporal end of the age significance, and the apostles would just sort of kind of hear about it. You know, no big deal. No big deal. Nothing to see here, folks. Just move right along. And that's one of the most unbelievably bad arguments that a person could make. But I digress. The book of Revelation helps us to understand what Jesus meant by this generation shall not pass. Now, keep in mind that Jesus foretold the Great Tribulation. Well, in Revelation, John said, Revelation chapter 1 and verse 9, I am your brother in the tribulation. What tribulation do you suppose that he was talking about? Well, tribulation was to be a two-pronged thing in the first century. There was to be tribulation against the church. Matthew chapter 24, 9 and 10, they shall deliver you, that's his followers, up to tribulation. You will be hated by all men. Okay. Was that a reference to Jesus' first century temporal generation? Well, of course it was. So here is John writing in that very generation, and he says, I am your brother in the tribulation. Greek word thalipsis, used 45 times in the New Testament. But then, Jesus foretold the Great Tribulation. Now, I developed this in my little book, The Blast from the Past, The Truth About Armageddon. And I want to call your attention to Revelation chapter 7, and where John saw the 144,000. Verse 13. John sees a vision of the 144,000 in verse 13. One of the elders answered, saying to me, who are these who are arrayed in white robes, and where did they come from? And he said to me, Sir, you know. And I said to him, Sir, you know. So he said to me, these are the ones who come out of the great tribulation. They washed their robes, made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Therefore they are before the throne of God and serve him day and night in his temple. So here are the 144,000. They endure the great tribulation. Now let's find out who they are. Let's find out when that great tribulation began. Just the other day on Facebook, a whole bunch of former preterists said, oh, the tribulation's been going on since creation. Jesus said the great tribulation would begin when the abomination of desolation was set up. He didn't say it began at creation. I mean, it's astounding how bad the arguments of some of these former preterists are. I coined a term years and years ago. It's not true Latin. I coined it. I made it up. Argumentum ad desperatum. And that means argument from desperation. And that's exactly what takes place among these former full preterists. When they cannot answer the biblical text, they literally make something up out of thin air. They make up arguments that nobody's ever even heard of before. But I digress. I got to go on. So who are these 144,000? Well, they're those who washed their robes, made them white in the blood of the Lamb, and they endured the great tribulation. Chapter 14, verse 1. Then I looked, and behold, a Lamb standing on Mount Zion, with him 144,000, having his Father's name written on his foreheads. And I heard a voice from heaven, like the voice of many waters, like the voice of loud thunders. And I heard the sound of harpists playing their harps. They sang, as it were, a new song before the throne, before the four living creatures and the elders, and no man could learn that song except 144,000 who were redeemed from the earth. These are the ones who are not defiled by women, for they are virgins. These are the ones who follow the Lamb wherever he goes. These were redeemed from among men, being first fruits to God and to the Lamb. So the 144,000 endured the Great Tribulation. The 144,000 were the first fruits of those of the redeemed. But the 144,000 are from the 12 tribes of Israel. That means they're in the first century. James wrote to the 12 tribes. Who were the first fruits? James 1:18. Of his own will begot he us through the word of God, that we might be a kind of first fruits to him. James, writing to the 12 tribes, who were the first fruits of those redeemed, living in the midst of persecutions. Count it all joy when you fall into tribulation. James 1:12 and following. So here we have the emphatic declaration that the first fruits of the 12 tribes of Israel, the first fruits of Jewish Christians, to use that term, were the first generation of saints, of Christians. But that was 2,000 years ago. That means the Great Tribulation was 2,000 years ago. Because how long was the Great Tribulation to last? Well, it certainly wasn't going to be for 2,000 years. That's one of the most ridiculous statements that's ever been made. The main point here, Jesus said the Great Tribulation, the abomination of desolation, and if you want to see the abomination of Revelation, go to Revelation chapter 13. You have the land beast, you have the sea beast, you have the setting up of the image, you have the abomination of desolation, followed by what? The 144,000 who come out of the Great Tribulation. So Jesus said the abomination of desolation and the Great Tribulation would be in his generation. John, writing in that very generation, spoke of the 144,000 who were the very first Israelite Christians. They would come out of the Great Tribulation. They were the first temporal generation of Israelite Christians. Thus, the Great Tribulation was in the first century temporal generation, not an ongoing 2 millennia reality. The first century. I'm not going to take the time today to press that point home, but I'll do it on the flip side. I'll see you there.